All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. We want to build anticipation for what's going to be an amazing night. That's the only reason for the delay. Thank you for being here, fellow neighbors. I'm John Dudley. I am a neighbor over on Beckford Street in Gloucester Crossing with my wife, Allison. Been part of the nucleus of getting the Ward 3 Civic Association up and running over the last few months. Again, thank you for being here. Ward 3 Civic Association is, we're trying to be a force for positivity here in the neighborhood and have three kind of main facets of our organization. We want to connect neighbors. We want to connect people. We want to champion and care for the people in our neighborhood and for the public spaces that we all utilize together. And we want to promote civic engagement, leading us here to the event tonight. And everyone is welcome at Ward 3 Civic Association events, just so you know. So hopefully this is the first of many if you're just joining us. Just a few notes, a little housekeeping with respect to the elections. Voting information to note: on Tuesday, September 24th, the preliminary election day polling location will be McEwen School. This will narrow the Ward 3 candidates from 4 to 2. The margin will be very narrow. Please, we encourage everybody and those watching at home in the future here on BevCam to participate very thoughtfully. On Wednesday, October 16th, that is the last day to register to vote to be able to participate in the final elections. On Tuesday, November 5th, that is election day for all the positions: mayor, ward, at-large candidates, and the school committee. For all of our at-large candidates, there are 3 people running for 3 positions. While all 3 will be elected, the top vote getter will be elected to be the president of the city council, a role that involves collaboratively setting the agenda and running the council meetings. If you feel strongly for 1 or 2 candidates, you're not compelled to vote for all 3. You can opt to pick the candidate or candidates you feel most strongly about. That is your prerogative. Ward 3's polling place, again, is McEwen School. And anybody can vote before Election Day at City Hall at the clerk's office, which is helpful if you're unavailable on voting day. And if anyone here or you know anybody that is not registered to vote, we have forms on site here this evening that you may take with you, be able to help others. And without any further ado, introduce my, my neighbor and friend, Sarah Bartley.
Thanks, John. One of the probably best parts of being part of a civic association has been getting to meet people like John and Allie, and the others of you who are here that have helped to plan this event. Honestly, they are great neighbors. They care. It's really nice to have people who really share my heart for wanting to see the well-being of our neighborhoods championed and my neighbors to really care about people. It's at the end of the day about people for them, and it's been great to meet people like that who really share my heart in that. So it's been great to get to know John and Allie and the others. For those of you who helped plan this event, let's give them a round of applause. Thanks, guys. I want to also just take a moment to recognize, well, we have a number of elected officials and candidates who are going to be speaking tonight. You certainly know who they are. We also have a number of other elected officials in the room that we want to just take a moment to recognize and thank them for being here. I see Councilor Hausman. I see Councilor Rand. I see Mike Cahill. Mike, thanks for joining us tonight. Mike did tell me he has a lot of really great plans for Ward 3, and he wants to come back and make sure that we host another night for him to share all those. So thank you, Mike. I can't wait to hear. Jim Latter as well, who's served Ward 3 for a number of years. Thanks, Jim, for being here. Kelly Ferretti and Lorinda Visnick, school committee members, are here, and our city clerk, Wes Slate, is here. Wes, thanks so much for being here and registering us and serving us and making sure we can vote safely and accurately. Am I missing anybody else? And remember, my colleagues on the planning board, thank you for joining us and for supporting us tonight. I don't think I'm missing anyone else. So thanks all of you for being here. I wanted to take a moment actually and speak to the candidates who are going to be presenting tonight to all of you, and everyone else can kind of listen in. Candidates, thank you so much for making the time, honestly, to be here and share with us. I want to give you a sense of what we hope to hear from you tonight. The Civic Association really invited you and asked you to be here because we want to get to know you as our neighbors. We want to know you as people. We want to know you as leaders. So we hope we get that opportunity tonight. We want to also know how you're going to listen, particularly for those who are running, all of you are running to serve Ward 3, but particularly those who are running to serve as our school committee and ward representative. We want to know how you want to engage with us. We want to know how you'll listen. We already sort of know how people listen to some of the loudest voices who make themselves heard. We also want to know how you'll listen to quieter voices that maybe don't have the opportunity or the privilege to make themselves heard as often, but whose concerns are really equally as valuable and critical to us thriving as a community together. So that's what we hope to hear. We also want to hear a little bit about how you plan to use the role that you as you know, when you're elected, you will have a role, you will have an opportunity. And we want to know how you'll use that to do specific things on behalf of Ward 3. So we hope that you will have the opportunity to be specific and tell us how you'll use that role. So I think this is kind of a tall order, and we can all hold them accountable for answering those questions. That's what we really want to hear. If you hear our hosts tonight ask some questions and you feel like you've got further questions, more things you want to hear, or you came in here knowing there are specific things you want to hear, we have question cards. Hopefully you were handed one on your way in. Any piece of paper will do. Feel free to write a question. Please direct it to all 4 ward counselors, as each one will get the opportunity to answer your questions at the end. We may not have time for all the questions, but we're certainly happy if you write your email address on there to make sure that you get an answer. So finally, I want to introduce our hosts. I want to thank BevCam for broadcasting this candidate forum. And I also want to introduce our hosts. Leslie Gould is the executive director of the Greater Beverly Chamber. She's also a Rotarian. We love having her a part of our community. Dave Olson is the editor of the Salem News, and he is the president of the Rotary Club. And it's really an honor and privilege to have you guys host for tonight, and I am more than happy to turn it over to you and let you ask the questions. That way I can stay friends with all of them. So thank you guys very much.
Great, thank you. Let's get right to it. We're going to start with the at-large candidates, and each of the 3 candidates are going to have 5 minutes to just basically introduce themselves to you again. And we'll go in alphabetical order with Tim Flaherty, if you want to go up and grab the mic. And we do have a question for you, a prompt, if you will. Thinking of the residents and the businesses that make their home in Ward 3, what issues do you think are unique to the ward, and how do you plan to address them? And what have you been doing to address them?
Okay. For me, Ward 3 is the heart of the community, and there's a lot of issues surrounding the whole city. But when you have a community like Beverly going from Pride's Crossing to Gloucester Crossing, there are a lot of concerns, and the traffic is a major issue. You have the Beverly High School here. You also have the middle school as well with McEwen School, and it's a big issue going through here. The concern that we have is how do you balance the old part of Beverly and the new part of Beverly? That's kind of a hard thing to do. I don't think there's a magic plan to get rid of the traffic. But the thing is we can work as a community and working with the planning board, work with the zoning board of appeals. You have the Balch House, the oldest framed house in America, and then you have right behind it the Cumming Center, which employs about 4,000 people in the community. We need to work with the businesses and the residents as a city councilor. That's our job, to try to do that on a daily basis. Actually, in the last couple years, I think I've been to more zoning board appeals meetings than I have in the probably 14 years that I've been on the council, because I see Beverly changing. And I think we need to be involved in the community. And one part, how we can be involved to get residents involved, is a master plan process. Some of you might be aware of that. Last time, I think it was 2002, that there was a master plan process. Right now, we're trying to get that moving, and it's had a lot of community meetings, but that's a big part. My biggest concern as a city councilor is I don't want to lose the character of our community. I know people have a lot of concerns with the downtown, the building, as do I, and the traffic, but my concern is every building we built I want to make sure it fits the character of a seaside community. I'm not sure that it does. For example, the old Friendly's building that was built, people still come up to me wondering when it's going to be finished. It doesn't look right, it fits in the community. So when you're building these houses, it's important to do. We need some housing in the community. We need affordable housing. But when we're doing those such things, we need to be able to build that fits the character of the community. And you can do that. And when I say the master plan process, how does that happen? That we can change the zoning, how it affects not only Ward 3, but the rest of the community.
Okay, Julie Flowers. And I neglected to mention our timer is right down on the front, and she'll give you a 15-second warning if you tend to go long.
You say that like you know me. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank the Ward 3 Civic Association for inviting me to be part of this forum tonight, and thank our host for being here. And the biggest thanks goes to all of you, of course, for attending and being part of this. So I'm Julie Flowers. I am one of your 3 at-large counselors. I represent the whole city, but tonight I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the relationship that I see between an at-large counselor and this ward, Ward 3. I happen to grow up in Ward 3. I grew up on Lyman Street over by the high school, and I actually realized today when I was thinking about it that, in fact, my entire Beverly existence, for the most part, has been a Ward 3 existence, because I live in Ward 3 currently as well at the bottom of Prospect Hill. That's with the brief exception of the less than a year that I dabbled slightly in being a Ward 2 Goat Hill resident. But then I moved back over to Ward 3 with no disrespect to my colleague and friend, Ward 2 Councilor Estelle Rand intended. But Ward 3 is really sort of knit into my heart and my Beverly experience. I grew up playing at the Balch Street Playground, where my son now loves to play. I walked to McKay School, which is where I went to elementary school. I rode my scooter to Dairy Queen with my best friend who lived one street over on Mason Street. And then I stood in line with hundreds of other middle school students trying to buy a pickle sub before I went to school at Memorial Middle School, and was able to dismiss myself to go across the street to the orthodontist for my orthodontist appointments. So Ward 3 has really sort of been part of my Beverly experience. But when I think about this ward, when I think about what it is to be Ward 3, I think about the way that Ward 3 is really a mosaic. Ward 3 encompasses sort of a microcosm of what I think is best about Beverly, what we love about Beverly, because Ward 3 is this broad mosaic that includes every type of housing, from affordable housing residences to apartment buildings to multifamily homes to single-family homes. Ward 3 encourages us to think about the way that we bring together our businesses and our residential areas, because Ward 3 includes both. Ward 3 reminds us of the importance that every person deserves a home and a place to be that they can afford in this community. I think about the way that Ward 3's history tells us that story and teaches us that lesson when I think about the Ward 3 neighborhood of Shingleville, which were homes over by now the Cummings Center that were originally constructed to be affordable housing for the workers of the United Shoe Machinery Corporation. And I think about the way that that history lesson enshrined in that neighborhood carries through to us today. The reality that communities, I believe, are stronger, better, and enriched when we can ensure that the people who work in our communities can also afford to have a home in our communities. That means that the people who serve us coffee, wait our tables, are paraprofessionals in our schools, teach in our classes, drive our school buses, plow our streets, pave the streets, do the work, enrich our lives with arts and music and so much more, all deserve to be able to call the place where they work home. To me, Ward 3 reminds us of that, and reminds us of the importance as city councilors of working with you and working with the administration toward that end, toward ensuring that people who want to be here in Beverly can call Beverly home. I also believe as an at-large counselor that a big part of what we're called to is to help intentionally foster community and to be partners with you in that work. And I see you already doing that work. It happens when the Gloucester Crossing Neighborhood Association is at work. It happens when the CDC is hosting First Thursday events at Hallcroft Park. It happens when children are playing at Balch Street Playground or Hallcroft Park. It happens when the Civic Association gets together and invites all of us to be here as neighbors and to talk. It happens when you come together to clean up a beloved landmark like the Balch House, or when you get together to do plantings at a neighbor's residence. All of those things are community-driven and community-growing enterprises that you're already about in Ward 3. So my commitment to you is that I want to be your partner in that, with your next Ward 3 counselor and with all of you, and think about how our communities are stronger when we continue to intentionally create spaces and places of community. And I think about that when it comes to our ward, Ward 3, because as my colleague, Councillor Flaherty mentioned, this is a ward that has busy streets, traffic, train tracks, all kinds of things going on. And yet we can come together and address those, address safety concerns, traffic concerns, reach out to each other across neighborhoods, and really continue to build that kind of community. So I want to be your partner. I want to hear from you. I want to meet with you. I'll be in your ward on the 25th for 2 events, in the morning at 8:30 at Marino's in the Cummings Center, and in the evening at Dunkin' Donuts in Gloucester Crossing at 5:30, if you'd like to come talk with me. Because what I'd really like to do is continue to work with your next ward counselor and with all of you to do the best that we can for this ward and for our whole community. Thank you so much.
Next, Paul Guanci.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, David. Thank you, Leslie. As usual, Julie is always a tough act to follow. I always remember the first time I heard her speak was at one of my friend's funerals at the First Baptist Church, and I was amazed at how compassionate and caring and really loving to a family that she barely knew. So thank you, Julie. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Paul Guanci. I've had the pleasure of serving as your City Council President for much of the past decade. I live in Ward 4 with my wife, Kristen, a graduate of this building, my son, Noah, who's a freshman here. My daughter, Julia, is in 7th grade over at the new middle school, and my older daughter, Anna, is 24. She's a graduate of this school, St. Anselm College, and she's a nurse with Leahy Health Systems. While I don't live in Ward 3, I do spend the majority of my life in Ward 3. I fell in love with Beverly when I was 12 years old. My dad came to Beverly in 1970, opened up a sandwich shop on the corner of Cabot Street and Elliott Street. And in 1977, it burned to the ground. I think I had been to Beverly maybe twice before then. We came up the next day. I remember getting the phone call. We came up the next day, saw the place in ruins, and my father obviously pretty beat up. Well, he went to the bank, Beverly National Bank, went and got a handshake from Larry Smith, who was the president at the time, got the money on a handshake, rebuilt, and 5 months later, he opened up his dream again. So to get his customers back, that was what his concern was, he offered a special, $1 a day, $1 a sandwich for 5 days. Well, needless to say, 10,000 sandwiches later, he had his people back. And I'll never forget that. The last day of the special, my mom brought us up, there was no bread left. And he said, well, I couldn't save 4 for you guys, I needed them for my customers here in Beverly. So, for better or worse, I joined the family business back in '86, and I've been running it and been in Ward 3 for 30 plus years. And the love the people had and the support they showed for my family business gave me the desire to want to run and help people here in Beverly. So in 1999, I know so long ago, there was an open seat. I was fortunate enough to get in with a lot of help from Councilor Tim Flaherty. Shows how old we are. So Ward 3 is really special to me. You've got a tremendous mix of businesses, single-family homes, multi-family homes. You have spread out neighborhoods up in Shingleville, off to the right side of Cabot Street, yet you have dense neighbors downtown. And in Ward 3, you have a lot of people that rent. Sometimes I think when people are renting apartments, they don't feel like they have a voice. But we represent not only homeowners, but we also represent people that are here for a little while or have chosen to live here in Beverly as renting. Loaded with businesses in Ward 3, that's our job too. While businesses owners may not live in the city, they do contribute so much, whether it be economically by hiring Beverly residents or contributing to Rotary, to Bootstraps, to the United Way. Everybody works together here as a team in Beverly, and the business community is no different. So we need to listen to their concerns. That's why it's so important that a member of the Chamber of Commerce is on our Parking and Traffic Commission, which works out good because traffic, I think, is the #1 concern here in Ward 3. Every day, it seems like a gridlock between Cabot Street, Elliott Street, McKay Street, Balt Street. We have 7 schools in Ward 3, and at times it can be chaos. I must say, though, that working with the mayor's office, especially with his chief of staff, Kevin Hartunian, who is an amazing individual. I don't think there's there's not a person that works harder to please his boss in the city than Kevin Hartunian. But I'm sure he feels sometimes that he has 9 bosses, because he's always there for our city councilors. With the construction on Cabot Street, if you have a question about it, he has an answer. And if he doesn't have the answer right off the tip of his tongue, he'll find out for you. So he's very ingrained here in Ward 3. The police have become more involved in Ward 3, especially around the middle school. Last year, I don't want to say the pickup and drop-off was chaotic, but it was challenging. This year, it's better. A lot going on all the time. It's been a pleasure the past 2 years working with Council Flaherty and Council Flowers. I look forward to going to work every Monday. I do have office hours at my place of business on Saturday mornings in Ward 3, so you know where to find me. What else? What have we done that's been great the last 2 years? Our city, the finance, 15 seconds. I got to go then. All right. Well, I just want to say, I want to wish all 4 candidates for Ward 3 City Council good luck. You all care about the city. You're all smart, intelligent, and want to give back to the city. And I look forward to congratulating one of you in January. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from school committee candidate Kim Coelho. And you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Kimberly Coelho, and I am running as an unopposed candidate for the position of Ward 3 School Committee. I'm a mother of 3 boys, aged 14, 12, and 5. So I currently have children at all 3 school levels: a freshman in high school, a 7th grader in the middle school, and a brand new kindergartner. I have lived in Beverly for 17 years come this November. And recently, my cousin helped me do an intensive search on Ancestry.com. And we learned that my family has lived and contributed in Beverly since the 1600s. My great-great-grandfather, Addison Davis, who lived from 1855 to 1938, owned the company Gravel Pond Ice, which provided ice to Beverly businesses, families, and individuals during a time before modern refrigeration was invented. Both my great-grandfathers and also my paternal grandfather worked at the United Shoe Machinery Corporation right here in Ward 3. Over the 10 years that my children have attended Beverly Public Schools, I have become used to advocating for children's best interests. I have volunteered for the PTO of Centerville Elementary School for the last 9 years and counting. This included craft fairs, book fairs, field trips, donations for events, and other activities and fundraisers. I've gained helpful customer service experience from my years working in restaurants, food industry, and retail. Also, I have served recently in the Beverly Public Schools Food Service Department. As a new school committee member, my first priority is to conduct listening sessions and walking tours with school faculty, staff, students, families, other stakeholders, and members of our greater community. In gathering this information and forging productive relationships with different people and groups, I look forward to advocating for all students and watching out for those members of our most vulnerable community. This is to ensure that none of our students fall through the cracks and that all have a chance to learn and to thrive. In the spirit of helping all of our students develop social emotional learning and mindfulness, I would like to leave you with this. In a world where you can be anything, be kind. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to ask our ward candidates to come up and sit up in the chairs up here. And if you could sit in alphabetical order, that would be great. That's your first test. You can go from A to the end. It's fine. And I'm going to turn it over to Leslie.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for allowing me to be here this evening. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you. You're welcome. As you get settled, I'm going to quickly let you know the rules of engagement for this evening. A few guidelines to support the flow of the evening. Please remember this is not a debate. We ask you to step forward when it's your turn. Each of you will have the opportunity to give the first 3-minute answer to a question. The others can give a 1.5-minute follow-up. Everybody grab that? Did you get it?
Yes.
Okay, cool, because I'm happy to repeat. All right, if you're ready to rock and roll, I'm ready to rock and roll. Okay, let's do this. Okay. First question to Stacey Ames. Thank you. How do you plan to involve the residents of Ward 3 in your work on the City Council and in your decision-making process? Additionally, if elected, what relationships are most important for a City Councilor to build?
Well, thank you to the Civic Association and to everyone here. My name is Stacey Ames, and I'm running for City Council here in Ward 3. And this is my first time running for office. I live on Prospect Street, around the corner from Julie Flowers. So when it comes to who is most important, I would say the people who live here. Because this ward is the heart of the city. It's the business economic engine. There are 10 schools here, but it's the neighborhoods. It's our home. And so as a result, I've knocked on almost 1,800 doors this year to get to know the people who live here and what's important to you. I've climbed the triple deckers on Beckford and Bennett. I've tripped over sidewalks on Sonning. I've climbed Prospect Hill. And so I believe what's important to Ward 3 residents is what is important to me.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes.
Okay. How do you plan to involve the residents of Ward 3 in your work on the City Council and in your decision-making process? Additionally, if elected, what relationships are most important for a City Councilor to build?
I'm going to involve the citizens by when they can just come and meet me anytime they want, like what's happening now. When I go on, I meet them, they tell me what their issues are, and I've done, not even being a council, not getting paid 1 cent, I've gone out and I've done the councilor's work for him. So that's a key thing. The citizens want to tell you their problems. Come and tell me your problems. That's how you can get involved with the city. We also have BevCam, who's filming now. Thank you very much. You can watch BevCam, channel 99, in the city council meetings if you can't make it. And you can watch it a few days later if you check the schedule out on the internet. So that's how the citizens get involved. They can see what's going on with the city. A very, very open individual. I'm not a fake at all. You know, if you've known me through all these years, I tell it like it is. I'm a good, going out and analyzing things and looking up information. I can do that for you also. But I'll do my best to give the citizens all the answers that they want. I mean, that's a priority. And there's a lot more to it, but I'll wait till another question comes up and I'll add to that a little bit more. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Shapiro. Thank you all so much for coming here. It's really great to see so many people in the neighborhood out. So This is already in my platform, built into my platform, which you can read about on my palm card, but part of my intention is to have office hours weekly. I think the inaccessibility of city councilors can feel like you can only meet them sort of on their playing field, and I intend to have meetings, have weekly hours where you can come. I'll be there whether you show up or not, but if you're there, great, then I can actually talk to the constituents that are in the neighborhood. I think it's really important to listen. Listening is how we actually hear where people's issues are, and then utilizing where their issues are, what frustrations they have, and fueling that passion that we have to build pragmatic ideas that are actually going to resolve the issues. So it can sometimes be tough to understand the complexities and the bureaucracies, I think, of how the legal system works or zoning works within our city. And I think it's the job of the city councilor to help communicate that to the constituents, to spend the time to explain why you're voting certain ways or why you think it's important to champion certain ideas and certain new changes to our zoning and ordinances in the city. So that's the responsibility to the citizens. And I think first and foremost, my reason for running is about affordability. And I hear it all the time from people. They're worried with this construction and the rapid growth of the city that there's not a holistic approach. And I want to make sure that we're listening to residents about creating arts and culture, making sure our schools and our infrastructure are matching the growth that we have.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Silverstein, and as far as building relationships, I can tell you that this all started for me a very long time ago at a grassroots level when our beloved McEwen School was at risk of closing for the first time. And so that prompted me to find out, how do decisions like this get made at City Hall right out under our noses, and where do we have a voice? So it became really important to me really early on to have a voice. So what we did as a group, and that's where some of the relationships I have in Ward 3 started, and I continue to maintain those relationships today. And one of the teachers at McEwen School says to me, "Remember your roots, Chris, remember your roots." So it all comes from us wanting to have a voice, being watchdogs to the city council at the time and the school committee, and trying to figure out how do we have a say in this and how do we advocate for ourselves, for our children, and for the greater community. So that's what we did, and that's what I did. And so, some of the people in the room today, we got on a bus and we marched to the State House, and we advocated for our kids, we advocated for our community. Do I really only have 15 seconds? Oh. Okay. Anyway, relationships are really important to me. They started early, and we continue to have them. As far as what I would do as a city councilor.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. I'll say more.
Yeah, the time goes fast. I would also ask if you could hold off on the applause till the end. That way we can get to more questions from everybody. Okay, so this one starts with you. 40% of the city's units are renter occupied. A large percentage of Beverly's renters live in Ward 3. If elected, you will represent a large share of the city's renters. What are the most pressing issues facing renters, and what are some specific things you would do as a ward councilor to address them?
Of course, the most pressing issue is what they're paying for their rent. And the way that the government has it set up right now under HUD, Housing Urban Development, they go off a rate that's set within the area. Right now, for an economy sized apartment, it's $1,600 approximately. If you want to get a one-bedroom, it's $1,800 something for a one-bedroom. If you want a two-bedroom, it's $21,094, or basically $2,200. It's what it's going to cost you per month. And a three-bedroom, $2,749, and you go to almost $3,000 for a four-bedroom. But that's the key. With how hard you work and just to live there, it's very hard to save. You're just putting all your money towards your rent and everything else. When I was younger, I was in Leominster in high school, and I rented an apartment with my buddy. It was $80 a month. And I was working about 40 hours a week, making almost $4. It's $160. So half of my pay basically went to pay the rent. Then I had $80 to a few other things. In the next 3 weeks, I had a quality of life and I could save. Today, you can't do that. So it's very tough. I can't, because of property taxes, to set the rate. That's very hard, because you've got to start hold on the property taxes or give something back to the property owners, and then there may be a chance that we can lower that cost. But that's very, very hard. I wish I could see something in the future other than the government getting involved. We'll say Folly Hills, we can buy for about $15 million, 76.62 acres. We can possibly put a facility there at a low, it's going to be basically concrete, basically simple maintenance, but it's a place that we can live and we can make it safe and we can put more individuals in the community that can somehow survive. Right now, I can't come up with a real answer to help you out other than property taxes. And, there might be a few other ways, but it's the landlords also. My tenant, 2-bedroom plus, I'm charging $12.50 right now. That's below the rate. But I'm lucky. I have about $10,000 more to go and I can pay the house off. A landlord right now, if they just buy their house, they cannot do that, unfortunately. So I do the best I can as an individual, and I hope other landlords, if they do own their property, they can do what they can for their tenant. Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm really glad you asked this question. I think this is one way that really sets me apart from the other people up here on the stage. Before 2 years ago, I was a renter. I myself have been gentrified out of several communities that I've lived in, several cities and several towns. When I was in high school, my mom and I were gentrified out of my hometown, and I had to travel from the town next door so that I could finish my high school degree there. So this is real for me, and it hits home real hard. It is impossible for young people who have student loan debt, children, and childcare, and then have to try to pay rents that are, by the way, in those new buildings downtown, $2,800 for a 2-bedroom apartment. So I think that the city has a responsibility to start thinking about some other ideas about zoning. Accessory dwelling units is something that Salem is considering. We are great in the fact that on a state level, we do have 12% affordable housing as opposed to 10% standard. So that's something that I admire that the city has already implemented. I think growing on that, potentially considering workforce housing and how we can potentially zone to make sure that the people who do work here, our police officers, our teachers, can afford homes, and how we can build that into how we are zoning these new properties and new developments that are coming into the city. I'm also a little concerned about the HOAs that are happening around the city, these small streets that are starting to become HOAs. So there's homes on these streets, but then those homes also have to pay an HOA fee. And these renters who are going to be able to move into those first-time homes can't also be expected to have to pay these extra fees because the city won't be maintaining those roads.
Thank you. Chris.
Thank you. So I also was a renter for many years in my early life, and my husband and I worked really hard. In fact, we work several jobs now to make our mortgage and pay that college tuition for our sons. And so I think, when we think about the people who rent, I agree with a lot of what Kirsten said, that it's nearly impossible for a young person to leave home here in Beverly and stay in Beverly and rent here in Beverly, given what the other financial burdens are that they might have. I did spend some time learning about some options around housing, and I was learning about great estates. Great estates is an idea that you can take historic buildings and turn them into livable spaces, many multiple home units inside that may or may not be low rent, but could be options for people to stay in the city versus having to buy a house or rent at a high rate. The accessible dwelling units in Salem that they're talking about in Salem is really intriguing to me. It might be a way for an older person to stay in their home and not be forced out, and have their sons or daughters stay with them, or for a family like ours to build. And what that does is it brings more money into the tax base because now you're paying a little bit more on your house, but you're able to keep your family together. Looks like I'm out of time again, so.
Thank you. Stacy.
So I rent. So I'm one of the 40%. And as I went door to door, or to Rotary meetings, or to meetings all through this city, I heard over and over again how people felt the buildings on Rantoul Street did not suit their needs. And the city has done a plan, a housing plan, which says we need all types of affordable housing, all types of housing, period. But I think we need to drive the bus a little bit here. I think we need to encourage developers to build the housing that suits us. And that is not what I have heard from the council enough, nor from the corner office. And that is one thing that I would push for.
Thank you. We'll start with Kristen. You're next.
It's Kirsten.
Kirsten, my
Yeah.
apologies.
Happens all the time.
Like I'm Lisa, not Leslie. I get that all the time too. Okay, the city has received 4 proposals for its reuse of Briscoe Middle School. No surprise, this is a key building in the city. Is there a specific proposal that you favor and why?
So I'm so glad you guys are asking about this. So I've actually met several times with Miranda from Miranda's Hearth, who is one of the proposals to build artist studios there. I think that one of the advantageous parts of that proposal is that we are building housing, and we do have affordable housing, a lot of affordable housing in Ward 3. That's the highest amount of affordable housing in any ward in the city. And so I think when we're thinking about how we can build some community back because of the loss of our elementary school about a decade ago, one way to do that would be to have a community center with the arts, with artisans in it, that's open and available, that has an open space for potential community theater projects and performance projects. So that's really interesting to me. And the other thing that's great about Miranda's proposal is the fact that it doesn't change the zoning of the building. So I think people think that it's just going to be free to sort of build that up and make that suitable and safe and up to date for today. And the reality is anytime you change the zoning of that building from an educational space to a residential space or an office space, the zoning has to change. The city looked into it for offices and for the police station and decided it was too expensive to do that. The other proposal that I'm also really interested to read more on is Harbor Light. Harbor Light is obviously based in the community, and they offer sort of a dual purpose, which is senior housing, affordable senior housing, and also artist space. So they'd like to do a little bit of both in the space, which I think is great. As somebody whose mother is a baby boomer and lives on her own and wants to downsize, I feel a strong need to make sure that I'm advocating for those people in the community. There are people who want to downsize from their 3-bedroom, 5-bedroom homes. There are new homeowners who would like to buy those homes. And those seniors or people who are about to retire don't have anywhere to move to. So affordable senior housing is advantageous for the community, and we do need it. I am concerned that Ward 3 bears the brunt of the affordable housing in the community. I'm happy that we do, as somebody who grew up in a low-income family. I'm proud to live in a ward that has that community here, and I think it's advantageous to have socioeconomic diversity in the place that you live. But I do think it's a time where we can have a city councilor who's advocating for more socioeconomic diversity in other areas of the city as well. There are other areas that can be built up, other train stations in the city. And so my concern with some of the other proposals is making that a space for another affordable housing space or an office space that doesn't offer a community center for our kids to feel like they can reconnect with each other. I see you, Kim. So those are a few of the proposals that I'm excited about. The other two for me just don't line up. I think Beverly Crossing has had a lot of goods in the city, and I think that I would like to see them kind of stay out of the ward for now until we get through the master planning process. Thank you.
So as far as Briscoe goes, the building is near and dear to my heart after being on the school committee for 10 years. We've worked long and hard to keep that building alive and well for the students until most recently. And I'm really glad to see that all of the proposals include preserving the open space and the historic elements of the building. When I sat on the Briscoe Reuse Advisory Committee, the desire to save the auditorium and to save the green space, which people say there's green space there. Well, there is in the front and in the back, but the desire to save those came through really loud and clear. And I love that all of the proposals involve very creative use of the building. So knowing the building sort of somewhat intimately, I do have some concerns about the extensive work that needs to be done, the masonry, the heating, the roof, all of that. And so I was curious about the proposal, so I did speak with Andrew DeFranza from the Harbor Light Community Partners and to learn about his plan and I agree that we are in dire need of affordable housing for our seniors. And so in that meeting with him, I did ask him if they were considering some wraparound services for seniors as well on site. And he said that there would be. I see I have 15 seconds again. As an artist, I love that they want to include artist space, and it also makes sense to me to include the North Shore Music Theater as a partner. And even though the proposal from Harbor Light doesn't bring the most money for the city, it plans to support our seniors, which is important to me and to my Ward 3 neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
So going door to door in the neighborhoods adjacent, around, behind Briscoe, I learned how important the open space was to the neighbors adjacent. And I think that it's really important that these projects have hung on to that. For me, I believe that we need housing. And so these projects, a ward counselor at this point is not really going to have a lot of say in. And because they're beyond that point. But I personally would support the projects with the most housing. Thank you.
I was looking at the one that had the senior housing in it. The price for it is very low. What I would prefer doing with the building is release the building, because we're going to need it again in the future. Because our children's children will grow up in all these buildings that we see around here. That's where they're growing up, because they're not going to be able to afford to pay the property taxes. But the one with the senior housing, I'd like to see 75% senior housing. Then the rest of it can be for mixed use. I have no problem with that. And again, I believe in leasing the building, because the money that they want to give, it's just so low. While they're leasing it, the money can go directly to the school district, because the school district is hurting right now. We can't even afford to pay for full-day kindergarten right now. The citizens have to pull $3,600 out of their pocket. And that's a complete disgrace. Every surrounding city has free kindergarten. Part of it is the Chapter 70 school funding. We're getting the short end of the stick. The city of Beverly, each student is receiving about $2,000. If you're a student in the city of Lynn, they're getting $2,000 from the state. The state's giving them another $2,000, another $2,000, another $2,000, another $2,000 plus is what they're getting. You're asking why we don't have full-day kindergarten? Treat us a little better. They're 65% economically disadvantaged children. We're 30%. If we go 2.5% more, then we'll be 50% of what they have. We should be at least getting $5,000 per student. Thank you.
Okay, this question is, we start with Chris. You have 3 minutes for this one.
3 minutes. Woo, yeah.
Beverly is fortunate to have 5 train stations. Unfortunately, none of them are in Ward 3. And bus service has also been reduced. What would you do as a city councilor to increase residents' access to public transportation here in the heart of Beverly?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, you know, I can say that what I see on my social media feed from my friends who travel in and out of Boston is a lot of frustration with the transportation system as it is now. And you know, I have forged some important relationships over my time with people at the State House and people, just people across the city. And I feel like as a community, as a Ward 3 community, we need a strong voice around transportation, around you know, getting to Boston and getting home accessible, especially if we want transit-oriented housing. Transit-oriented housing isn't really going to work if the transit part of it is broken. So I'd love to lend my voice to some of the MBTA talks and be involved in some of the discussion around that, and hopefully help make getting to and from town easier. As far as transportation within Ward 3, I know that there's currently a new shuttle that carries people from the Cummings Center and Cherry Hill to the train station, and I think that's a fabulous start. I think, I don't know how much it's used right now. The last check-in on that I had was that it was used very little. However, once word gets out that you can connect to the trains from Ward 3 pretty easily, I'm hoping that that's another way to keep us out of our cars and use some more environmentally friendly options to getting around and getting to and from where we need to go. And then just as far as transportation in general, the master plan survey revealed that 50% of us love our cars. We love to drive and get to and from places by car. And that's not healthy for the environment. It's not healthy for us. However, it's the most convenient in a busy working life, and so that's what we do. I really would like to lend my voice and advocate for people so that we can have safer roads, that we can work harder on enforcement around distracted driving, that we can have a sense of community where people feel safe walking on the streets and getting to and from school and work and all of those places, and be out of our cars less. Trying to think of anything else. I have 3 minutes. I don't want to blow it now. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Stacy, 90 seconds.
Transportation in Ward 3, traffic everywhere, right? 10,000 car trips in and out of the Cummings Center every day. But I think it really went on steroids. It really got out of control when the middle school opened. And there were traffic studies done for the middle school. Don't know what they said, don't know what they did. But I think if we could work, especially with the schools, to encourage carpooling, to encourage more walking, and to even encourage a better functioning crossing guard system, I think if we take those commuter hours, that would take a lot of the stress off. My team and I were out holding a sign at the corner of Cabot and Balch last week. The crossing guard was there for 15 to 20 minutes, and the rest of the time, those kids, that traffic, it was a nightmare. And going door to door, I hear, traffic is a nightmare. So I think we need practical solutions that don't cost a lot. I can see carpooling. I don't see a whole heck of a lot more bus trips, but I know practically we can do a lot, and I'm happy to work hard to make that happen.
Thank you.
Yes, reference to carpooling. If we can find some space in the city where we can have parking, we could actually carpool. Maybe 4 individuals to a car can park there and go straight to the train station. Then it may not fill up so early every morning. So that's a big plus there. Out of the box is working with the Cummings Center, using some of their parking spaces, and have some type of shuttle or extra track that runs right along the line that runs straight to the depot train station. People can park there, run straight down, and that mechanism, whatever they want to use, can come straight back again. They load up again, cross Elliott Street, and go straight back down again. I think that might be more economical that way. But again, we have to work with the Cummings Center, maybe allow them to put another parking garage in. No, I won't tell that to the neighbors or nothing like that. I think we have quite a bit. But in the future, even the Cummings Center, they may start building apartments on top of that when everything else is full. Because, well, that's getting off subject anyways, because I was going to go to the master plan. But I think the citizens, we could all get together, we could all individually come up with ideas. And if it's what we like the best, then we can invest some money into it, and I think that'll work for us overall. But the citizens have to be a part of that to figure that out. But again, if you can find some parking in Beverly, the old dump, maybe we'll be able to park on that. That's off of 128 someday, and then we can run right over to any of the train stations. Thank you very much.
So when I first moved to Beverly, I was working in Boston, and I did the treacherous walk down Park Street, and then down Becker and to my apartment, or to my home. And I can tell you, it's not safe. It needs to be repaved. The sidewalks need to be redone down that street. It's not well lit. And so it doesn't feel safe, which is why people have been hit there. So the infrastructure needs to match as we build. So yes, we do have traffic in the city. I know that there's been discussions about switching the fleet of school buses to electric electric school buses and potentially changing the zoning of where we pick up children and making sure that children who might be within what is considered walking distance, 2 miles, we actually shorten that down to 1 mile. So more kids are actually able to catch a bus to school, and switching the bus fleet from a gas fleet to an electric fleet. Obviously, this is like a pipe dream of the future. Hopefully we can find that technology. Hopefully it catches up. I think other than that, also building more transit-oriented buses within the city so that people who do work at the Cumming Center can move from the train stations to the Cumming Center and back. I also am a proponent of bike shares. We do have bike lanes that we are putting into all our streets as we're repaving, and I use a bike. I love riding a bike downtown. I have multiple locks for my bike, and in this neighborhood, in this community, I know that people would be considerate and cautious to each other. So I do think bike shares are another great option for the city to consider, especially with the master plan, potentially working with a company that's already doing this in other communities.
Stacy, this question is for you to start. Are there specific ways you think the City Council should respond to the addition of marijuana businesses to Beverly? For example, are there additional concerns you have addressed via the user agreements?
That's a great question.
We only ask
So, of course, this is a hot button issue. And the reality is that we, as a community, have voted to allow for pot shops here in the city. And again, I think this process has gone pretty far down the pipeline, and it is my understanding that at least 3 shops have been chosen. Now, I think, and I understand that one will be in Ward 3. And my biggest concerns are actually parking and traffic and the impacts on the neighborhood. Beyond that, I also am concerned about the overarching effects of bringing marijuana into our community. So I would think it would be a positive step for us to work with community stakeholders to move kind of slowly here. And I don't think it will move all that quickly, but there is so much that information that comes out. I mean, just last month was vaping and the impacts of that. And so while it is a reality for this city, I think we need to be very careful as to how we move forward to make sure that we have an organized, effective, legal path that will be good for all of us, especially the residents of Ward 3 that bear the brunt of so much in this community. And I know, I'm a business owner. I work with major corporations like Raytheon and Honeywell. I forge agreements and work deals. I know that I would be an effective communicator, negotiator, and advocate for us in Ward 3. And I can tell you now that I'm happy to work with the council, the mayor, the business owners, the other stakeholders, but I will always work for the residents of this ward.
I was at the ICC, and there was a company that did come in there, and they talked about what they were going to do right down across from the Pickled Onion. They want to put a place in there right now. And some of the parents were very, very upset that their children walking to school were going to be walking by that building. So I mean, that's not right that that's taking place. But it's going to be basically, you don't just walk into the store. They're going to call by appointment. They're going to bring them in by vehicle. And that's how they're going to do it. But if that's the way they're going to do it, it doesn't need to be right there in the open on Rantoul Street. They can find another place down on Park Street where no children walk by. So I think that would be a better idea to the front of the building, nothing happens there. If they can go through the back of the building, get a right-of-way, but nobody sees these individuals coming in here. One of the other key issues there was mentioned earlier was parking. There's no parking there, even though some individuals come out, like last night, talking about how they had this parking downtown, down by Depot 2, what's going up there. There's no parking there. Unless you park at the perfect time, but I just don't see it at all. So we shouldn't be putting them in any place that children are walking by those businesses. So I can agree with the citizens on that. The other thing that came up was we can redo the referendum if the city wants to go through that, and we can all re-vote again and get under the 50%. So there is a way to reverse that, just so you know. Thank you.
Sorry. So this is obviously a very poignant topic. I lived in Seattle, Washington, so I've actually lived in a community where people are smoking weed freely in public, and that's part of how living there is. And I can say from living in a community like that, once it's integrated into the community, it isn't as frightening as you might think it is. The reality is there's already weed in Beverly. And if you don't think there's weed in Beverly, I'll tell you a few streets you can walk down. So I think noting that this is an opportunity for Beverly to collect a lot of tax money. Marijuana, there are numerous studies to show ways in which it helps people, health benefits, people who have different serious health conditions. It's better for pain. If you want to get more into the studies about opioid addiction versus using marijuana for pain medicine, there's a lot of studies and research coming out now. So to think of this as something scary kind of pushes it aside when it's potentially a great opportunity for the community. I do think we need to be mindful, obviously, about our children, just as we have to be mindful about cigarettes and e-cigarettes and other drugs and other things that they're exposed to by their friends and just from walking around town. And that has to take part between building coalitions between the city, parents, children, students, school counselors, and making sure that we're advocating and listening to each other, listening to what our kids see and what's going on from their perspective, and also being informed by data. The data that we have is the best resource we have to move forward with. Moving forward with anecdotal evidence about what's going to happen to the community isn't going to be productive when we have a great opportunity to use this as a community to move forward with more tax dollars.
So I am a longtime volunteer with the group called Be Healthy Beverly, where we just landed a drug-free communities grant. We're focusing on vaping and smoking cigarettes and alcohol use and trying to educate students and parents, children and parents about not becoming addicted to things like this. Vaping is becoming pretty scary now, where people are dying from it. Kids are being duped into thinking it's a safe thing to do. I'm also part of the citywide drug task force. I actually helped create that task force because I cared deeply about substance use and assisting people to get the help they need. So I also attended the public meeting with Rick the other night, and I heard the outcry of angst from our community about having a dispensary right there on Rantoul Street. But I can tell you I learned a lot about what they'll be offering. They do have a plan for parking and security, and they do have a plan for giving back to the community. So I asked them, can you be part of education? Can you be part of helping our community learn more about these things so that we can talk intelligently to our children about smoking marijuana? The other thing that I think about with this is when you buy from a dispensary, you know what you're getting versus buying from the black market, which is very, very scary right now. So I want to keep a keen eye on this, and with the understanding that just over half of us voted for it. So we really need to do the best we can with it. Thank you.
All right, we'll start with Rick for this one. Okay. There is privilege in having the time and accessibility to participate in civic life. People with financial freedom and free time are the ones who can often go to meetings and serve on boards. If elected, what would you do to make sure residents of all financial and social backgrounds can get involved in city government?
Currently, I use Facebook to put as much information as I can put out to keep the citizens informed. City meetings will pop up. If they're very important, I'll put those down. You can also go to the City of Beverly and yourself, and you can look up the sites there. That's one way you can do that. If you want, you can walk down to the City Hall, go inside there. There's a board that posts every meeting they're going to have. But I can do my best to come up with a specific Beverly, Mass site that only shows politically wise when all the meetings were taking place. The television channels, I can post all those on there. You can see when there's going to be a meeting coming up. You can watch those also. And some of those they play them over and over again on BevCam if you look that schedule up. So if you miss it, you can still be part of it. You can always get in touch with me. You write your own letter. I can analyze it, or we can talk. I'll write the notes down, and I'll put the information out that you want me to put out. I have no problem with it. Even if I disagree with it, you have a right to put that out there. If you're working and you can't go there, I totally understand that. You're trying to pay your rent or your mortgage. So sometimes, I'm lucky. I was lucky when I bought my house. It was $190,000 when I retired from the military. Today, if I retired, that would not be happening. So I feel for you all. Same thing. Heck. I can wake up every morning, I get a paycheck, I got my medical taken care of. So that's just, I'm just one of the lucky ones. So, I wish you all the best, but I will work with every one of you, put the information out I can, and you could just Facebook me and ask me. Some individuals do that, but try to hit my personal Facebook, because sometimes the messages go somewhere else and they disappear. But that's the key thing right now. Senior citizens, you do have a computer. The computer is down at the public library. That's your computer. I would love to see the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts where they can actually be there to assist the senior citizens or someone that doesn't know anything about the computer. They can sit down with them, show them how to start it, how to do searches. Nothing to do with passwords or nothing like that, but just show them the basics of the computer. I gave my father a computer back in 2001. He was better than me with that computer after a few years. So, that's keeping people informed, learning how to use the computer. I think that's a key thing in reference to, what's going on down at City Hall while they're at work and everything like that. Thank you.
So I'm currently in a paycheck-to-paycheck family, and as I said before, I grew up low income, so I know what it feels like. I lived through it. I didn't have health insurance for 9 years, and the one thing I do know is how to work the system. That's a privilege I learned from my mother. My mom was homeless when I was in 7th grade, and she built her own home when I was 22. So I know what it looks like to work the system, and not everyone is as privileged as I was to learn how to fill out the forms, how to stay on top of things. And I'm in a position where I can advocate, and I have the time, and I have the energy. And these are the constituents that I feel most need to be heard on City Council. We have a whole bunch of middle-class people and wealthier people serving on City Council who are white. And no one is advocating for the people of color in our community and the poor people in our community. And I think they need a voice. So this is my main reason for running. And one example I have to show you that I did that, the steering committee had no people of color on it for the master plan, and I went out and I found them. I spent a week and a half finding 2 people from our community, one who is a renter and single mother, the other one who works in data analytics, who are both black, and wanted to serve and give their time to be a part and make sure that people of color and marginalized citizens in our community are heard on the steering committee and involved in the master plan process, because they are part of our community too, and they're a huge part of the Ward 3 community, and I want to make sure that they're being advocated for, because they get lost in the shuffle and they don't feel heard.
So I'm struck by the word privilege. It is a privilege and an honor to have the time to do this work. They say if you want to get something done, give it to the busiest person. So here I am, a very busy person, working 2 jobs and, also school committee president and doing everything I do. That privilege does require us to connect with people. And I think connecting with people is different as a city councilor, because on school committee we sort of have a captive audience. City councilors have the whole city, but specifically we have Ward 3. Not only am I concerned about every voice being heard, but I think often we leave out the voices of people who have disabilities as well, and people who have communication issues. And I really feel strongly that they should be at our table, and they should be lending their ideas and thoughts to what's going on. And sadly, I didn't see any of my friends at the master planning meetings. For me, I will make a better effort to get them there next time. But I think it's important to also meet people where they are, because people just they're so busy, they may not have time to get out. So the CDC has done a great job in Gloucester Crossing with meeting people where they are there. I'd love to stay involved with that, hang out at the senior center and get to know some people that I don't really know very well, and, learn from everybody and, make myself as available as possible. Thank you.
So it's true. It does take time, but I think when you flip it around the other way and you look at how does our government, how accessible are we? How open are we? How much information do we disseminate? How many meetings do we have that are open and accessible? And these are all questions that sometimes I find quite frustrating here in Beverly. And so I believe that virtually every single meeting ought to be open. Every Plan Beverly subcommittee meeting ought to be open. I believe that you may not have a seat at the table, but you ought to be able to get access the information that you want, because it does take time, it does take energy, but I don't think that people should have to jump through hoops to find out what they need to find out, or to be able to access the people that they need to access. And I think that when government listens to all players, we have a stronger and more fruitful union. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Kirsten, this
Yes.
one's for you. And this is the last question of the evening. This is a thought-provoking question. I'm prefacing it. And it's one that I'm really glad that I wanted to ask it. I'm glad we can ask it. I want all of you to think of something that, give us something we can really sink our teeth into. Give all of us an example of a time that you made a courageous decision.
Ooh, that's tough.
I know.
Courageous decisions. Well, of course I'm going first. I think all of us have made a courageous decision to run for office. And I think that I'm really impressed by Kim and getting to know her, running for school committee. It's courageous because there's nothing more brutal than putting yourself out there in front of your community and hoping that they see you for who you are, right? It's incredibly difficult. I am compassionate and I am kind and I care deeply for my neighbors. And I know I'm new here, but that doesn't change the level of commitment and love I have for this city. It's the first home I've had. I've lived in 30 homes before the age of 20. And so this is my home. And so to put yourself out there and feel nervous and excited and criticized, and people who don't know you, which is a lot of you who don't know me, might hear things about who I am or how I am. It's a courageous step to come out and come in front of a community that doesn't know you that well and doesn't have a history to build up trust for who you are and your integrity for what you're saying and the words you're speaking. So this has been a courageous experience for me tonight, and having conversations with the other counselors that I've had. I've been going to city council since January. I've spoken at city council meetings. Every time it gets a little bit easier, gets a little bit gentler, but every time it feels like I have to muster up some courage, because I'm not advocating for myself. I'm advocating for the people in my community that I love and I see, and I want them to know they are seen. And so that is a huge level of trust that I'm asking for from my neighbors, to trust me to hear them and listen and advocate. And how I choose to move forward with that in a productive way, to let that passion, that truth and honesty fuel how I pragmatically approach building coalitions in town and caring for our children and our seniors. It feels massive. It feels huge. And it's my great joy to muster the gusto to get to do that. And I hope that I get the honor of serving as your counselor. And if I don't, I'm not going anywhere. So I will still be at city council meetings, and I will still be at planning board meetings, and I will still be advocating. And I'll probably be working on other people's campaigns and advocating. And if there was a woman of color up here who I felt was advocating, I would have taken a seat months ago.
So I have to say, well said by my fellow candidate here, and I agree. For all of us, I applaud all of the courage here, and for the folks who are in our community who do this work and put ourselves out there. I do have a specific example of courage, and I'm looking at my friend Patty over there because she's going to like this one. When we, as a school committee, were voting for the sanctuary school district, I knew that there were constituents who did not agree with how I was thinking of it along the way, and I also knew that there was a big price tag put on that word sanctuary, and we had to think long and hard about, how were we going to do this. But the bottom line was about making sure that students felt safe in our community and in our schools. And so the most important thing in that decision was that no student ever felt afraid to come to school, nor did they feel afraid to go home to find out that something horrible had happened at home. So that was the most important thing to me. I did a lot of homework. I met with a lot of people, and I learned about the word sanctuary. And the scary part about it that required the courage was, we may have been risking funding for all 4,000 of our students. And I didn't want to put us in that position. However, it felt like the right thing to vote it forward and to welcome all of our students as if they all just were born here in Beverly. Thank you.
So courage takes on many forms, doesn't it? I'm a single parent. I run a business on my own, and there are little mini courageous things we do every day. And when I started to go door to door, I started to hear stories of other people's courage throughout our community, throughout our ward. And that gave me more courage, gave me more inspiration to know that people really wanted this city government to work better for them. They wanted their streets to be repaired and to understand when they would be. They wanted to feel safe. Many employees wanted to feel better respected. And that gave me the intestinal fortitude to just say, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep knocking. I'm going to create a team of people, and I want to do this job. Days when I was worried or scared or thought that maybe I should not put myself out there quite so far. But I think at the end of the day, we can make this city better. And that is what I want to do. I want to work with the people here and the council and the mayor to give us a better quality of life and a better Beverly.
Yes, that was a great question. It made me think of the past, but some things I can't talk about, but I was in Panama. Sorry. I was in Panama one time, and I heard a shot go off, and I looked out the window on the 5th floor, and there was a guy standing up against the telephone pole, and the blood was about that much. He had a main artery, and people stood around. So I had to go down the elevator as quick as I could. And then I got down to him, and I bent his legs, both legs up, and I could feel where the hole was, and some of the meat came out where the bullet had shot through. He was left-handed, but he didn't have enough money to buy a left-handed holster, and he shot himself. So I got lucky, and it did stop, and a taxi came by, and he didn't want to get blood in his car, so he drove off. And then the next one came, and I got him in there, and I told him, keep his legs bent till he gets him to the hospital. And then I gave him what was in my wallet and sent him on his way. And, you know, I got blood all over my hands and everything, but you don't worry about that. You know, and that's not courage. I think it's just normal human instinct. And that's just, you know, one of the stories. And there's other ones. I'm sure we've all been, you can't think of them now, but everybody here has done stuff for other people because you care for them. Okay, I'm sorry. That's all I have.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being part of the evening here. We've heard, I've certainly learned a lot. I hope you've taken home a lot just on this last question, which I think was lovely, speaking about courage. Courage comes about because people care deeply about something, and I appreciate everyone up here on the dais in their efforts to be courageous and caring for the people in this neighborhood. Thank you to our moderators. Thank you to our elected officials. Good luck to our candidates. There are the important dates about the elections and other information on the flyers that you may have received already, or we can give you on the way out. And please stay in touch with us with the Ward 3 Civic Association on Facebook. Again, we want to be a force for positivity in the community, and we hope you'll be a part of that positive force with us. Thank you. Have a great night.